Welcome everyone to Navigating Your Way to NIH and NINDS Funding. I'm Cleona Kelly and I'm a BIN co-founder and co-lead of the Professional Development Program. So this session today is being recorded and we also have live captioning available. This is located at the bottom of your screen and is a tab that has the word CC and live transcript. And you can also use the chat function today to ask any questions that you have. If you are unable to attend any of our previous sessions, then please check out our YouTube page where all of our events throughout the years and Black and Neuro weeks that we've had are available. We also have our past NIH webinar recorded online and is available at the link sent in the chat. To stay up to date with our future events, you can join our mailing list. And lastly, we have our next event, which is an open mic night on Saturday, the 30th of April. The registration link will also be in the chat for both of those. So without further delay, I will hand over to Dr. Michelle Jones-London to begin the session.
Thank you. Next slide. Yes, so I really want to start out by thanking the Black and Neuro organizing team. As Cleona cited, this will be our second event that we've done in collaboration with Black and Neuro. Such a wonderful organization, so inspiring. Full disclosure, I do sit on the advisory board, but I would say that about this group, even if I didn't. It's amazing the amount of work and just resources and tools that this organization has been able to give to the community. Very inspiring. And so I acknowledge Angeline, Brielle, Paige, and Cleona for working with the NINDS team and putting on this event. Next slide. In terms of your tour guides today for navigating your way to funding, I want to really say this session will be very broad. One of the things that we were asked in feedback was to really take a step back, and instead of diving into individual mechanisms, was to really provide a broad view of sort of NIH 101. And so your tour guides today, I'll start by telling you, and I'm Dr. Michelle Jones-London, Office of the Programs to Enhance Neuroscience Workforce Diversity. We call our office open at NINDS, which is the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. And so I'll give you an overview of the NIH neuroscience funding mechanisms. And then Dr. Ulrich will really take you through how to read a funding opportunity announcement. That's going to be your map for the money, sort of your treasure map for the money. Then Dr. Marguerite Matthews will talk about the NIH grant cycle and some of the key players and who you should ask for what. And then Dr. Ibrahimi will talk about putting together your application. And once again, this will be in broad sort of strokes in terms of an overview. And then we'll end with Dr. Jenny Kim talking about resources. We always say we don't make or write these funding opportunity announcements to just put them out into the world and not have people succeed. We really want you to succeed. So we've developed many resources to give you helpful tips. And then we'll hopefully have time, if we do our job right and get through this navigation quickly, to allow you to ask some audience questions. It can either be about the slides that we've presented or just anything else that you have on your mind that you want to ask of us at NINDS. Next slide. So this is the good news. I always like to start off with the real positive. I know we hear a lot of, maybe discouraging or negative news coming out about funding or even, opportunities. But what I want to say is, by the virtue of you joining this Black in Neuroscience, I know that many of you are focused on neuroscience, and that's a great thing, and it's a great time to be invested in that type of research. As a neuroscientist myself, what I would say is that I'm actually pretty jealous of people that are currently engaging in research at this time. If you look at this slide, it just really highlights the number of NIH institutes that actually support neuroscience research. Of course, today, this talk will be coming from the perspective of the NINDS, but know that there are other institutes as well that have neuroscience focus. And those are the institutes, some of the institutes rather, in purple. And in terms of the investment, you could see over time, neuroscience is having the largest NIH investment. This includes things like ADRD, Alzheimer's, HEAL initiative, the Brain Initiative, all of these very focused research areas, but just neuroscience in general. You can see it's a multi-billion-dollar investment. The thing to keep in mind with everything that we'll say, like I said, this will be from the NINDS perspective, is that at NIH, there are 27 different institutes and centers. And really know that there's probably a home for you somewhere within the NIH, but knowing how to navigate is really keeping in mind that each IC has its own personality, its own priorities, its own structure, its own budget. And so what we say is when you've seen one NIH institute, you've seen one NIH institute. Next slide. And then to drill a little bit down, I've talked about our office, and as I said, we call it open. And the goals of the office is really to open opportunities and open access to enhance the diversity of the neuroscience workforce. We're very focused on that goal. And the way that we accomplish that is by, as I said, writing and promoting and developing specific funding opportunities to really circle back to that goal, to make sure that the research enterprise really includes all people from all segments of society. And we do that through individual, but also institutional programs. And on the right hand of the slide, it's a success story website promotion that we have where we call it From Potential to Action. And here we have various vignettes that really exemplify showing role models of really successful, diverse researchers that have used some of our programs. And really, especially in this week where we've just gotten the news about the Supreme Court, we know how important it is to see role models, to see someone that can go before you, that you could look and say, hey, that could be me too, sharing intersectionality or sharing stories. And so this is a wonderful website to sort of get that sort of encouragement and that message that you too can persevere. In terms of programs, we highlight on the site programs that go from all the way from graduate all the way to junior faculty. And it really is our open pathway of programs that I'll show you on this next slide. Yeah, at the NINDS, the trouble really isn't finding a program. It's sometimes deciding which program you will choose. And so this slide, I won't delve into a lot of it, really just gives you a nice overview of the programs that we have. We have programs all the way starting from high school all the way to new faculty, with the purple programs really highlighting the programs that are run out of our office and that have a real targeted interest in increasing workforce diversity. And today, I just want to put on your radar two programs that I think really highlight the work that we do in terms of focusing on support, but also a support across critical transition points. Next slide. One of the programs is the Dspan program, and I know that there are many within the Black and Neuro membership that are actually awardees, and we're very proud of that. So this is the NIH Blueprint and Brain Initiative Diversity Specialized Pre-Doc to Postdoc Advancement in Neuroscience. And so key points here is that this is a program that supports just neuroscience in general. So if you have any research that is mission relevant to any of these participating institutes that you see at the bottom of the slide, you can apply for this award. And also the Brain Initiative mission focus areas are eligible as well. The other thing with eligibility is that you have to have 1 to 2 years left in terms of finishing up your graduate work at the time of award. That would be the F99 portion. If you're successful in terms of receiving this award, you then receive the K00, which is 4 years of postdoc funding. It is basically this golden ticket that can empower you to then go and find the postdoc mentor that fits your interests and that will give you the mentorship that you deserve. You don't have to do the same type of research that you're doing in the postdoc that you did in your graduate work all it has to be is still neuroscience relevant. And then on the right hand of the side, you see other eligibility criteria in terms of fitting, the alignment with the goals of the diversity goals of the program, and then also having to be a US citizen or permanent resident. Next slide. So as we go up the career ladder, the other program that we have to really help and sustain across critical transition points is from the postdoc to that first faculty position. And so that's the Mosaic program. Many of you may have heard the Mosaic program. It was developed by NIGMS, but since then, pretty much most of the NIH institutes at NIH have joined them, including NINDS. And so the way that this one works is that you get up to 5 years of funding. The first phase of the award, the K-99, is up to 2 years. And then once you successfully find a tenure track position for your faculty position, you then can activate this R00, and that's faculty funding for up to 3 years. The neat thing about this one is that not only do you get this K-99 R00, but with the Mosaic, you also are embedded into a scientific society cohort program to get professional development and mentoring through a UE5. And so there are several scientific societies that you see on the slide that are part of the Mosaic. And, 2 programs to really think about if you're either, finishing up your graduate or studies are about to, or, within your advanced postdoc and thinking about a career in academia. We really encourage you to think about these and apply to these. But before you apply to these, you'll have to learn how to read the FOA, and there, Dr. Ulrich will take over.
Hey everyone, it's great to see you all. So the funding opportunity announcement, or the FOA as we call it, is really the official announcement that there is a grant available for you to apply for. And you can find the full list of them in the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts, which I think Jenny will talk about a little later on the webinar. And basically all FOAs are required by law to have the same structure, or maybe it's by regulation, not law, but they all are sections 1 through I think 7. And the important thing to note is that the information that you need may be in several different places. So sometimes it's nice to kind of copy and paste it into another document with a format that makes a little more sense to you and how you work. And it's always good to recognize that the FOA text is in addition to any instructions in the SF424 application guide, which is sort of your baseline, the general instructions that apply to everyone. Then you have the FOA with any specific instructions, and that overrides the guide. And then you might have, on top of that, related notices. And these are things usually that are published after the FOA, either to make corrections or adjustments, things like that. And we'll talk through all of those pieces. But if you do copy and paste into your own document, I always tell people to check back periodically to make sure that the FOA wasn't reissued or a notice wasn't applied that might change an instruction or two. So in general, we always recommend kind of going through this process when you're reading an FOA. So first, you want to see which institutes or centers in NIH are participating. So that helps you understand whether your science in particular will be supported by this, this grant. And then you want to check expiration dates and any of those notices that I mentioned. You want to go into eligibility and make sure that you and your institution are eligible and see if there are any kind of budget restrictions in there. Then you can go to the background section, read that to understand kind of the priorities and why this grant is being issued. Then move on to responsiveness, application instructions, and the review criteria so you understand what is required in the application and sort of what the expectations are, how you're going to be reviewed, all that stuff. And then once you've done all that, if you still have questions, you can contact the appropriate person that's listed in at the bottom of the FOA. And Marguerite will talk a little bit more about the different roles of like the 3 different people that you'll encounter when you're moving through the NIH system. So here's what an FOA looks like. This is from the parent F31 diversity. So you can see at the top, it always starts with the participating institutes. And then you have this table of IC specific information that is on any really big FOA that has a lot of different participants. They move a lot of the contact information into a table just so it's easier to read. Oops, I went to the next slide by accident. And so you can see that when you click on this, it will give you a list of all the different ICs that are participating and all the contact information on the left, and on the right, there's stuff about the mission of the Institute and if there's any different budgetary restrictions or various priorities of the Institute with this FOA. So you can see for this one, there's a lot of participating institutes. There's a lot of information to weed through. If you go back, then you can see there's going to be an activity code. So that's the F31, the F32, the K01, all those alphabet soup. You'll see the announcement that this is a reissue of an earlier F31 diversity. And you also see there's some notices listed here that I mentioned earlier. So for this one, it's very important. This one has been reissued. So that means that this is an old FOA and we do not want to apply to this one or follow these instructions because things may have changed. So if you click on the new FOA, then you can see here, okay, and we're going to check the notices again. And it doesn't look like there's a new one, but we can also double check later in the dates to make sure that this isn't expired. But there are notices of special interest that are associated. So these are special kind of notices that talk about the kind of science that an institute might be interested in. So you can see here, there's stuff about clinical SPECT imaging, research on aggression, research on migraine and headache. There's different institutes have different priorities. And if you fall into any of these buckets, you can put the notice number in your application in the, I think it's on the front page where there's a little space for it. And that just lets us know that you're being responsive to one of these special interests, and we can kind of look at it and pull it separately. And there's some other notices on there about using an ORCID ID or various changes that you can also look through. Then you have the funding opportunity number, and this is very important. A lot of times when you're talking to your program officer, you're going to want to say, hey, I'm thinking about applying to this with this number, and then that will help them orient them to, if you just say F31, it could be parent F31, it could be the diversity F31. A lot of programs share similar activity codes, so you want to give the funding opportunity announcement. Then there's a whole bunch of other sort of information in here, but most important is the purpose. This will give you a little information about if it's relevant to you. Then we have a bunch of dates, and this is where you can check when it was posted, when it's open, what the expiration date is, application due dates, when merit review is going to happen, all these various dates that are going to be important for you. And then the next section is the application instructions. So how do you actually submit, and the table of contents. So that's section 1. In part 2, you see the funding opportunity description, which goes into more detail about the purpose, why we're giving the grant, what kinds of things should be included. And again, a shout out to the table of IC specific contacts. Here you get a little more information about that this is a grant and not a contract or a cooperative agreement, that it accepts new and resubmissions, that clinical trials are not allowed, different funds available. So sometimes there's a specific amount set aside for a program, and that would be listed here. Information about the award budget and the project period, so how long the grant can be, how much time you can request. Then there's additional budget information, stipends, tuitions, fees, everything that's allowable for you to charge to this grant. Then we have the eligibility information. What's very important to recognize is that an NIH grant goes to your institution. It does not go to you. So you need to make sure that both your institution and you are eligible. So it talks about eligible organizations. It also will talk about whether foreign institutions are eligible to apply or not. And then there's a bunch of required registrations that hopefully your organization has already done. Then it talks about the program director or PI, which would be you as the applicant. And then you have some eligibility criteria there. So for this, you have to be a citizen, you have to be enrolled in a PhD program, there's various criteria there. So you want to make sure that you fit in both the applicant and the institution. There's a little bit of additional information on eligibility sometimes at the bottom, such as not allowing duplicate applications under review at the same time, duration of support, some information about your sponsor, which would be your PhD advisor, and so forth. Then in section 4, this is information about the actual application itself, what's required, what you have to write, the kinds of content that needs to be included. And for the most part, this is going to follow the SF 424 application guide, then the FOA's additional instructions on top of it. And they should all link back to a specific section of the application that's required. So again, just highlighting that this is, the guide is sort of your first stop, and then the FOA. And then sometimes there's an additional attachments or information about what's allowable in the appendix. This tells you that clinical trials aren't allowed except you can get experience in a clinical trial. It talks about reference letters, how to submit, various other kinds of pretty specific information at the bottom of this section. And then we have section 5, which is all the review criteria. This is what the reviewers are going to be asking themselves about your grant. And the way that this works is there's 5 separate sections that they're going to give an individual sort of score on, and then they're going to give an overall score. And so each of these questions is supposed to inform the score. So there's the fellowship applicant, the sponsor, the research plan, training potential, and the institutional environment. Then you have additional review criteria, which do affect the overall score, but don't get individual scores. So things like human subjects, invertebrate animals. And then the last piece is going to be additional review considerations. And these do not affect your score, but they are, the reviewers say whether they're acceptable or unacceptable. So for example, if your responsible conduct of research is unacceptable, it won't affect your score, but we cannot issue the award until that is remedied. And that would happen after review. Then down here in the review and selection process, there's some information about, is this going to be reviewed by CSR or NINDS, for example, the Institute. There's some information about a bunch of policies and what your notice of award will look like and requirements for the progress report. A lot of this information is sort of relevant after you get the award. There's information about how NIH is going to evaluate whether the program is effective. And then lastly, you have your agency contacts. So if there's no table, then the names to contact will be listed here for program, for review, and for grants management. So that's an FOA. It's a lot, as you can see, but they all follow this same structure. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marguerite, who's going to take us through sort of a big picture of what happens after you apply.
Good afternoon or morning, depending on your time zone. Next slide, please. So this is essentially depicts what the grant life cycle is at NIH. And one of the most important things to note is this can be a long process, both in terms for your own preparation, your ability to plan out your application, but even just going through each of the steps from the time of submission to getting a funding decision. So give yourself plenty of time to enter the process, but also know that there can be a long waiting game to go through this entire process. So we won't talk specifically about every part of the life cycle, but want to draw your attention. We've already talked about finding opportunities and how to read a funding announcement. You will, once you apply, there are certain people, or even before you apply, certain people that you likely will interact with. There's the review of your application. and getting the award, etc. But if you want to learn more in depth about this cycle, please listen to season 1 of Building Up the Nerve podcast. It can be found at ninds.buzzsprout.com. I'm sure that link will magically appear in your chat box very soon. But we are also on every streaming platform where you can find podcasts. Next. Click. Okay, so one of the things that I really want to, one of the things I'll talk about is who are the key players, who are the people that you should be talking to or interacting with at NIH, or what you should expect from each of these different people. So the first point of contact, and probably the most points of contact that you will have, are with program officers. So all of us today that are talking with you are involved in program, but you would be assigned a particular scientific program officer who knows a lot about your science, understands the type of work that you're doing, and would hold you in their portfolio. And whether that's at NINDS or perhaps another institute, there is going to be someone that can help guide you and ensure that you are the right fit for them. So they are a scientist, and an administrator of grants. They identify areas of scientific need. They communicate NIH priorities to you as an investigator, as a researcher, whether or not you currently have NIH funding. They help manage the grants, making sure that the grant, you're doing what you say you're going to do. And they also communicate with the Institute's leadership about science. So these are the people that you want to talk to. They're always going to be up to date on those notices that Dr. Ulrich mentioned. They'll know about different shifts in priorities and can help really guide you through the entire process. Scientific review officer is not likely someone you will interact with much, but they are also a scientist. They have some expertise in areas in which you are applying, and they manage the review of your application. And so whether they belong in-house at the Institute or through the Center for Scientific Review, they're folks that are managing the review of your application. And then of course, we have the grants management officer who cuts the check, who helps make sure that your institution gets the funding for your application once it is awarded. And if there are any issues with your award status, getting your notice of award, something changes, perhaps your PI is moving to another university. Again, since the award is not yours, it is the institution's, the grants management officer is the person that you would need to be connecting with if you had to somehow transfer or make some other changes, or you graduate early, so you have to terminate your award. Anything related to the dollars of an award is managed by that person. Next. All right, so many questions we get are about contacting a program officer. They could have many different names. You may hear PO, program director, chief, like Dr. Michelle Jones-Linden, health scientist administrator. There are many different names, but each of these people are working within the program space, and so they understand the funding opportunity and know about their grantees and their institute's priorities. It's important to contact the relevant program officer on a funding announcement. And if you don't know where to start, there are certainly opportunities to figure out who that is. You have touch points here at NINDS. And so if you're lost and you're needing help navigating, please reach out to us. But there are many different ways to connect with a program officer. And if we have time later, perhaps we can do a quick demo of the reporter matchmaker system. But these are most program officers prefer to be contacted via email rather than cold calling if you do happen to find their phone number. It's always important to let the program officer know exactly what it is that you need. I am a pre-doctoral student in my 3rd year, thinking about applying for an NRSA fellowship. This is the funding announcement that I found. Is this relevant? If you have specific aims already or an outline of what your research is, it's always best to send that so they make sure that they're the right person to contact. And if not, they can connect you with someone else. And they may also be able to set up a time to talk with you and discuss what you're interested in. It's always important to contact the program officer as soon as you decide that I read the eligibility, I'm I and my institution are eligible, and I believe this is the right opportunity for me at this particular career stage, you want to talk to them months, I would say 3 to 4 months before the deadline. And excuse me, it's possible that you may talk to a few different POs before deciding where to submit. So say you're doing work on migraines in children, perhaps. So NINDS has a migraine and headache disorders portfolio, but you may also be connected to the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, because they are dealing with development, and perhaps that is something that is specific to that institute that has a particular interest. So you may end up talking to people at different institutes that have a similar interest in your particular research area. So don't get discouraged if someone says, yeah, you might fit here, but you may also want to talk to so-and-so, because the worst thing that can happen is you prepare your application, want it to go to one area, and then it ends up going somewhere else. So always be in contact with the program officer ahead of time. Next. All right. Oh, yes, we do have a slide for this. Okay, awesome. So the NIH Matchmaker reporter system allows you to insert information. You can do an abstract of your research, or if you have sort of a sketch of your specific aims, you can insert this text into the reporter system and hit either similar projects or similar program officials. It actually doesn't matter which one you do. Once it processes everything and goes through all the keywords, you can switch back and forth between the two. But this gives you an opportunity to find out what program officers across all of NIH may have projects similar to the text that you entered in their portfolios. And they'll tell you which NIH institute they belong to, and how many projects that are similar to the text that you inserted in their portfolios. And so it gives you kind of an idea of where to start. This isn't 100%. There are definitely times where I've used it as an NIH staff person to say, oh, I think this is going to go to so-and-so, let me send a student there. And then they come back to me and say, actually, that person says this would not fit into their portfolio for XYZ reasons. They think that I should be talking to so-and-so. So don't get discouraged if you sort of get moved through. If you don't get a response at all, definitely let Open know, or try to reach out to someone else maybe next on the list. But we definitely will find a home for you, or a place that is likely a very good fit. So, and you can also learn a lot about other projects of people who are doing things similar to you. So this is a great opportunity for you to learn potential collaborators, maybe even someone who can be an outside examiner if you're a pre-doctoral student, or if you're looking for a postdoc position, or even opportunities to find other faculty doing work that are similar to your work. You can look at these similar projects and who is already being funded. Last thing to note is that once you apply and you actually hit the submit button, or not you, your institution submits your application for you, you will be assigned your own program officer. And if you talked and you did your due diligence beforehand, it will likely be someone you've already been in contact with, but that information would be found in your ERA Commons account. And that is highlighted on the screen where it says Administrative Program Officer. It tells you their name, it gives you their phone number and their email address. Next slide, please. So for scientific review officers, they're responsible for the scientific and technical review of applications. They will first review applications for completeness and conformance with application requirements. So if for some reason you don't have all of the right information in your application, they would be the ones to be looking out for this, to ensure that this is eligible to go further into the review. They're also responsible for ensuring the fair and unbiased evaluation of the scientific and technical merit of the proposed research. So they are conducting the review
meetings, whether it's a standing study section or a special emphasis panel. I know this is a lot of jargon, a lot of words, but the group of people, and it changes depending on what funding announcement you're applying to, but the group of people, the group of outside peer reviewers who are looking at your application, they are there, they're conducting it, making sure that the evaluation is going as appropriate. And then they will provide you with summaries of the evaluation that both helps you understand what was said and talked about your application, but also it helps program to be able to make funding recommendations to our advisory council. Next. So once you submit an application, there are some things that will happen, and some of this is just to let you know that there can be many steps before you actually receive your final funding decision or your actual award. You don't have to memorize all of this, but just know that so once you submit your application, you're kind of off the hook for a little while and you're just hanging out waiting for your review. You're anxiously awaiting, did my application get discussed? What is my score? But there may be an opportunity for you to have to submit information prior to the peer review meeting. And so the SRO or the scientific review officer will reach out to you and ask you to send certain types of information. And so the different types of things that you might send are, if you had said you were, had an article that was being reviewed for publication, or you had to change of sponsor or co-sponsor, any of these types of changes, or if something new happens, you have a new patent that gets approved right before you're submitting, these are the types of information that may get submitted after you do that initial submission. So the first submission is, in some ways, that's kind of it, but you can have some other additions, and the scientific review officer would be able to tell you what is allowable and what is not. Next. So after the review, so I will say, once your application is submitted and you get a score, it's not time to panic, or it's not time to get too excited. 2 steps sort of have to happen before you can really have a better understanding of where you stand in terms of funding. It's best to wait until your summary statement is released. This will show up in your ERA Commons account, and it will have all the information about the reviewer's comments about your application. And if it was discussed, it will have sort of a summary of the discussion that took place and their overall level of enthusiasm for you as an applicant. It's important to read the summary statement, feel all the feelings you have about it, good, bad. This reviewer, I can't believe they said that. Oh my God, did they not understand what I'm doing? However you feel, have those initial feelings, and then read it again and say, okay, I have a better understanding of what is being critiqued and what I think may be things that I can appropriately and sort of address without being too in my fifis. So after you read your summary statement, that is then the time to contact your program officer, the one listed in your ERA Commons account, and discuss the reviewer's comments, what the score is, if there is a percentile attached to it, what that may mean in terms of your chances of funding, and then whether or not your program officer is suggesting that you resubmit your application. So perhaps if it's not discussed, or if the percentile is fairly low and may not be close enough to the likely funding range, they may be able to say, yes, you should consider starting to put together a resubmission. There's also an opportunity that you may decide to submit a completely new application. I mean, we can talk later about what that actually means, but your program officer is going to guide you. They should not be giving you absolutes for anything. Yes, this is going to be funded. No, this is not going to be funded. Yes, you should resubmit. No, you shouldn't resubmit. But they will give you a lot of good advice that you should really take into consideration and have a discussion with your mentor. Next. Funding decisions. The thing probably most of you really want to know, how is this done? Many of our training and career development mechanisms are not percentiled. And so many of you may have heard, if you reach a certain percentile, you get funded. And at NINDS, while we have a pay line that says if you're percentiled above X, you're going to get funded, and everyone sort of below that is now up to debate. That's not typically the case. So for many of you won't have to worry about that. If you are applying for an NRSA F31, you will see an impact score as well as a percentile. And we can talk more if you have questions about how the percentile is done, but the percentile is really to kind of standardize the score across different study section groups. And so it sort of allows for fairness that one study section didn't get sort of higher score just based on maybe the day versus other study sections. So it's just a way to sort of rank applications in a more standardized way. But many of these mechanisms are not that we fund for our trainees, excuse me, are not done that way. So we have a little more opportunity to think about funding decisions. So a few other things go into these funding decisions since they're not percentile and not based on just if you have this percentile, you're funded or not. It's based on the score, it's based on the reviewer comments. So where are the weaknesses and are these things addressable? How big of a concern are they to your actual training potential, your ability to do the research, and then the scientific and training program recommendations. So our office does do a lot of work to ensure that we are considering many different factors to be able to make recommendations on the applications we would like to see funded. Next slide. And so I guess one last thing I will say is that's why it's also really important to stay in contact with your program officer and heeding their advice. Again, they're not the be all end all, but once you've established a relationship, that really can make it much easier for them to understand sort of your research program, who you are as a person, as a researcher, your training potential, all of these things, and be able to go to bat for you as necessary. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Ebrahimi, to talk about the actual application.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marguerite. So you heard a lot of information and you might need to rewatch this video to get everything shared. But for now, you're here, you're starting to put together your application. And we just want to take a second to remind you that this process of writing the grant is also an exercise in organizing the vision of your research and your career development plan. And it's a focused way to talk with your mentor. So obviously getting the money is important, but you'll gain a lot of skills and clarity from the journey of applying itself. And you're absolutely not alone. And hopefully that's clear as we go through the steps in the next slide. So we're going to very broadly overview some steps to the application. In step 1, you want to explicitly define your career goals and area of research interest. So for example, my goal is to be a blank, an independent research scientist at an R1 institution, for example. You want to define your question. The question that motivates my research is blank. And at the end of the award, I will be ready to secure a postdoc, apply for a K-99, et cetera, et cetera. In step 2, you want to outline the techniques, skills, knowledge, and relationships necessary to achieve your career goals. So for example, when you transition to independence, what techniques will your lab use? What funding will be applied in the near future? What publications will be generated? So kind of work backwards from your end goal to get the skills you need. In step 3, you want to take stock of your needs and goals to identify mentors and advisors who can guide you during this time. And you want to look beyond just your institution. So you have many sources of mentors. We'll talk all about that in season 3 of the podcast, but ask yourself, what will you learn from each identified mentor? Are all your areas of development covered, etc.? And finally, step 4 is putting it all together. So first and foremost, hopefully this is like a take-home point for you. Read the instructions very carefully. As Dr. Ulrich mentioned, they change a lot. So the most disappointing thing is to put all that effort in and then having something go wrong. So it's important also, while you're putting together the application, to be consistent, tell a consistent story throughout the many components of your application. You want to be realistic, not overly ambitious, and you want to be explicit. So reviewers can tell when a training plan is generic. So again, this is a great way of using your peers and your mentors and your community to give you outside feedback and tell you if you are being consistent throughout your application, if you're being realistic, if you're being specific, etc. So again, I kind of just did an overview of season 2 of our podcast. I highly recommend listening to that as well. And again, we're always happy to answer questions, but I will pass it now to end the talk to Dr. Jenny Kim to discuss the resources.
All right, thanks so much. So I'm going to round out this presentation by talking about a few online resources that NIH has to help guide you through the grant application process. So the NIH Office of Extramural Research has this grants and funding webpage where basically all the information we talked about today is available online that you can reference here. So if you look at the right-hand side of that image banner, there are some quick links to things like how to apply. There's a direct link to NIH Reporter, which again has that NIH Matchmaker system, but is really a database of all funded NIH research. There's also a link that will help you find the active funding opportunities. So this is really helpful if you want to find funding opportunities for that are relevant to your research. So here you can view all the active announcements across the institutes and centers. You can filter by the ICs, you can filter by different funding mechanisms, and use it to really explore to determine which one is the best fit for you and your research. In the bottom left, there's this About Grants section, which again reviews a lot of the information we went over today, the grants process, how to apply, planning your application. So that information is there for you to reference as well. And if you're interested, they also have more information on policy and compliance at NIH. So if you have questions about grant policies surrounding like conflicts of interest, animal welfare, this is where you can go to read more about that. Next slide. NIH OER also has this listserv that you can subscribe to get the weekly NIH guide table of contents. And this is basically just an email they'll send you usually on a Friday of all of the funding opportunities and notices that were published that week. You can also receive this information by subscribing to the RSS feed, or you can also follow them on Twitter at NIH Funding. Next slide. And so if you want more specific information on research training and career development awards, I highly suggest that you visit the NIH Research Training website. This provides details on the available funding opportunities for a lot of different career stages, all the way from undergraduates all the way up to investigators. There are information on things like the various supplements provided, fellowships, training grants, and you can find information on things like eligibility, the application forms and guidelines, and the relevant policy notices that they have to funding opportunities. So this is a really helpful tool. Next slide. And so if you know that your research is relevant specifically to the NINDS mission space, I highly recommend that you visit our website, the NINDS Training and Career Development website. So this contains all of the funding announcements that are supported by NINDS. There are resources like previous webinars that we've hosted. These webinars provide technical assistance for how to apply, how to put together a strong application. We have them for several funding mechanisms like the Diversity F31, the Dspan F99. We also have links to tip sheets to help you apply for awards like the Diversity Faculty K01, and for putting together a strong career development plan, which is an important component for most of our fellowship applications. Next slide. And to give you an idea of how our website is formatted, so this is the home page, and let's say you're a postdoctoral fellow, you're interested in exploring more funding opportunities, you'd click the postdoctoral fellows button up top, and this will bring you to a separate landing page, which will show you all of the different funding mechanisms that are relevant to postdoctoral fellows that are supported, again, by NINDS. So let's say you're interested in the Mosaic K99 R00. So if you were to click that link, advance. it would bring you to this page. And this page has basically a broad overview of the Mosaic K99R00. It has a direct link to the program announcement. It has information on things like eligibility and due dates. But if you look to the right-hand side, the panel, there's also the PO contact information. So if after reviewing the program announcement, reviewing our website, you still have questions, we really want you to reach out to us. We're happy to answer your questions via email. We can set up a call to talk to you, but we're here to help you navigate this process. So please do not hesitate to reach out to your program officer. Next slide. And once again, I need to highlight my favorite podcast, Building Up the Nerve, which is hosted by Drs. Matthews and Ulrich. Season 3 is coming out at the end of April. It will focus on mentorship, give you tips on strengthening your mentoring relationships, provide advice from trainees and faculty. And as many have said before, if you haven't already, please go back and listen to seasons 1 and 2, which focus on the life cycle of the grant and applying to fellowships and career development awards. Next slide. And these are just a couple of ways to keep in contact with us. So if you're interested in keeping up to date with, future events or new funding opportunities, please subscribe to our listserv, follow us on Twitter. Again, can't say enough, please listen to our podcast. There's a lot of good information there. And, if you have a question, don't hesitate to email us at NINDSdiversitytraining@mail.nih.gov. And I'll end it there.
Thank you, Jenny. That was a whirlwind tour. And we would probably get the comment in our summary statement, overly ambitious, but we're just so excited about these programs. And we really wanted to make sure that we gave you as much information as possible. So just know, keep putting your questions in the chat. If we don't get to it on this webinar, we will still reach out to you and answer your questions. I guess the one question, sort of a theme here, is we talked a lot about funding and training opportunities, but most of them are going to be limited to citizens and permanent residents. So what are the programs that are out there for people that may not be citizens or permanent residents? The one program that we have that's in the training world is the general K99R00, and that's the postdoc to faculty. You do not need to be a US citizen or permanent resident to apply to that program. With regards to the F31 programs, you also can, if you are a US citizen and you happen to be abroad, you are also eligible to apply to those awards. Let's see, the other question. Do we see another one in here that we can answer really quickly?
There's a question about how to create a sponsorship team when you're at a new institution and you don't really have any connections at that new institution.
So in terms of, especially if you're coming to a new institution, one of the suggestions, and we can go around to the rest of the panel, is to really lean on your mentor, right? Or to also use scientific societies as a resource. We happen to fund a lot of research education projects. One of them is the Neuroscience Scholars Program. SOCNAS, Abercrombs also have a wealth of leaders in the field, but also supportive mentors. Another place that you can look in terms of building a team, not that just within your institution, but outside of your institution, is the National Resource Mentoring Network. And we also call that the NRMN. Anyone else? Okay. The other question, oh, and Margaret already got to the F32 one, great.
I've got a potential question.
I will, oh, sorry. I was just gonna, I was gonna type this, but I'll just say it. Please note that the F32 there is a parent award, which many of you may have heard of, the postdoctoral F32, which is supported by most of the NIH institutes. They typically do require or expect preliminary data. Many folks who are second, third, and sometimes even fourth year postdocs tend to apply for that because they've been in the lab and they've been collecting data. The NINDS F32 is specifically for new postdoctoral research. So you can apply as soon as 12 months before you start your postdoc and within 12 months of starting. So you can't be in your second and third year and apply for the NINDS F32. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, it's really important to read the funding announcement, who supports it, what the requirements are, because even though they may have the same letter and numbers, it's not necessarily the same at different places. And again, if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to us and we can guide you better on that.
Great. I was just going to ask a quick question for maybe someone who might be watching this video a year ahead of time. Is there anything you can suggest to kind of help them boost their application beforehand, something that could help support it?
I can take that. Are you talking about for the F32?
Just more so in general. So if you're kind of watching this video and maybe thinking, okay, this is something that I'd like to apply for, but it's not my time yet. I'm just kind of prepping ahead of time. What's something that can maybe make me stand out that I can do now within that year to help boost my kind of, application?
That's a great question. And I think Marguerite really showed it in her slides in terms of the time span. It feels like, oh, I'm not ready or it's not time for it, but it goes so quickly. So even preparing a year ahead is not too soon. I mean, one of the things that I would say is that all of these applications want to see a record of productivity. And so that could either be papers in some instances, but we don't, we always encourage people not to paper count. It really is, it could be papers. If the papers are ready, that means to get those ready in that year, but it also could be presentations. Are you actually talking about your science in public venues? Are you going to conferences? Are you doing poster presentations? I would think about that in that year. It's like, how can I really increase the visibility of my productivity so that the reviewers can see that, I am the right person for this research? I don't know, the other people on the team, do you have other suggestions?
I think also just, yes, listen to the podcast. I also say, hopefully you're always thinking about improving. So work on what skills do you need, or what skills do you want? Like, you want to become the best, fMRI expert, and it probably won't take you that maybe year before you're ready to apply, but maybe you do learn a lot of things in that meantime. And so you kind of like just maybe cross that off the list. What's something else that you can, work towards? Maybe it's a new type of analysis. Maybe it's learning more about whatever. Always remember that especially with training opportunities, like a fellowship, there has to be a training component. So you're always going to be thinking, you're constantly improving, working on your research, but what can you add to your skill set? How can you enhance what you already have? Maybe there's a different model system that you can use. So there's always an opportunity that as you grow and become stronger, that there's still other things to learn, still other things to do, and just keep track of that, even just writing it out. If it seems super ambitious today, maybe it won't be in a year. Maybe you'll really be surprised, and that's something that you can add to these applications that show that you've been thinking about this and working towards it throughout the years.
Great, thank you so much. Right, we're going to have to close up now because we are a couple of minutes over time, and I do apologize. So if you still do have questions, please do reach out to the team. And so I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. Thank you to the incredible NIH and NINDS team. It was a fantastic presentation, and I'm sure people will really walk away feeling informed and hopefully excited to start these applications. So just as a reminder, this and all of our events will be available on our YouTube page. And if you haven't yet, join our mailing list for all the updates, and make sure you register for our open mic night on Saturday, the 30th of April. All the links, including the recording for this session, will be posted in the chat. And so we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.